It's okay, it takes time. I know everything will
Welcome
be
back to Strong, everybody. I'm so excited to bring another amazing guest to our episode this week. We are meeting with Riya, who is currently based in Singapore. And we're going to be talking about her life, her journey, her experiences, and what it's really like to be 19 at this time in the world today. Hi, Riya. How are you?
Hi, Maria. I'm glad to be here and I'm feeling quite excited for this interview. Yeah, all positive.
I'm so excited to have you here. I remember watching you on an interview on LinkedIn and listening to you talk. And then when I heard how old you were, I was like, I want to meet this girl. She's so inspiring and she's so way beyond her years. So I'm so excited to have you here. And I'm really excited to be able to share your story with parents and teens around the world. Ria, I know that you're 19 right now and you're going to turn 20 in a few months. That must be really, really exciting. I remember being 19 and thinking, I can't wait to be 20. I'm going to be what they call an adult and whatever that means. And the changes that I thought life would bring to me. So I can't wait to hear what that's like for you. But let's go backwards in time to when you were a younger girl in those formative years. I know that you lived in Dubai from the ages of 5 to 14. And then you moved back to your home country, India, to complete your higher education before moving on to where you are right now in Singapore. What was it like to transition at these key times in your life? I mean, being a teenager, 13 years old, has got to be probably the most transformative year of a young person's life, in that your hormones are changing, expectations of you from teachers and parents are also changing, what you expect life to be like, because suddenly you're not a child anymore and you want to be treated as a teenager that you so rightly are. But then having to leave what you knew behind and move back to what everybody told you was your home country and where you belong. But you described that time as a time of feeling different. And you also said that it was a time when cultural changes and language barriers made you a target of bullying. So I'd like to talk a little bit about what it was like to grow up in Dubai and how it changed as your formative years were in India, being a young teenager before moving to where you are right now in Singapore.
Yes, definitely moving to India was one of the biggest challenges in my life. The transition was really difficult for me because apart from just the physical, emotional changes that happen to a teenager, which is also quite difficult and challenging, I had a complete change in my environment and I had to, move from Dubai, where I was living with my parents and where I had friends from about 8 years. And now I had to move to India, where I had to live with my grandparents. So it was like, and it was a big house, just me, my grandfather, and my grandmother in a big house. It was very lonely. And I had to leave all my friends behind. And I mean, I couldn't imagine, I wasn't prepared for the change. And when I moved to India, it was like, I didn't know the language because I was born in North India. So the language that I spoke at home was Hindi, but my mother tongue was different. So because I didn't know how to speak my mother tongue, I was often bullied in my class. Like everybody also found me to be quite different because I was brought up in a different culture. I would say Dubai's culture is quite liberal, but when you move to India, it's quite conservative. Like I was expected to behave conservatively uh, on spot. Like I wasn't trained to be in that culture, and so it was a lot of change at that time. And also that was during my 14th year when I was in ninth grade, and when I moved to 10th grade, I had a lot of pressure as well to study better. The thing is, my study, I wasn't very good at studies. Like in Dubai, I was living a luxurious life. Like my parents, we were quite well off. My parents bought me everything that I wanted. Sometimes they would buy me things before I would even ask them. So I never really felt the need to work hard and perform well in my tests. But when I moved to India, I realized that my basics weren't very good and I had to score well because the environment was so competitive, and I got the competition in me and I felt like I have to prove myself. And I was also being compared to my elder brother, who was a bit more academically oriented as compared to me. he was way better than me in subjects like physics and math, and I wasn't very good in those subjects. So it was quite difficult for me. Uh, Everything happening together made it really, really difficult. Yeah.
So I know from a parent's perspective, when I look at my teenage daughter, and I remember my eldest daughter being a teenager, I look at them and I think, as a parent, I want to make sure that they have more than I did, that they can have experiences that I wish I could have had at their age. Almost like you were saying, your parents gave you things even before you could even ask for them. And I think parents tend to try and give to their children both time and things, because we just want our teenagers to feel the love and to feel what we felt potentially we were lacking at that age. Would you say that that was part of what it felt like for you growing up? And was that one of the challenges, that you didn't have time to understand what you wanted, and maybe parents and grandparents were having expectations of you? Do you find that that could have been an issue for you?
Yes, definitely it was an issue. Uh, Honestly, it was one of the many issues that I faced. I couldn't really openly talk about my issues to my grandparents because there was a generation gap, and they expected me to, perform well in studies. So like, I come from school, I don't talk to much people, I go and study, and then I cannot do much apart from studies. Like, I didn't feel like I could have a life apart from just being a good student when I was in India. And back in Dubai, I think I had a much liberal life. My parents, they were quite supportive in a lot of things. They helped me sing better. Like, they bought a karaoke machine and everything for me to sing. And also, I had my friends. I had a much more vibrant social life. But back in India, because I also wasn't able to speak the language well, I ended up getting lesser friends. And plus the way I talked in class, the way I behaved, the more social I was, people didn't like me because they thought it was a bad trait. Like, I wasn't being conservative. I wasn't being the shy girl in class. So it was just not me, and I didn't like it. They didn't like me, and I didn't like what I was going through at that time.
And how long would you say that you went through that? So you were in India from 14 to 18 when you finished your higher education. Was it that entire time that you were feeling this way, or did at any point things start to change for you and you started to feel like you could fit in and make friends?
When I was in my ninth grade and 10th grade, that is when I was 14 and 15, I was in a more conservative school. Like, the culture was more conservative in that school. Kids were from more conservative families. And so those 2 years were really difficult for me because I just moved from Dubai and into a school which I never, into a school where the culture was really different. And but when I moved out of my school after my 10th grade, for my 11th and 12th grades, I moved to another school, which was a bit more liberal. The culture was much like, you could do what you wanted without being commented upon everything. So I really got better friends, and I actually liked those 2 years more in India.
Many young people growing up in the UAE or in other countries around the world that will travel abroad, either for boarding school purposes or even to go to, most commonly, to go to university, they do go through that transitionary period. Would you say that that's how you would describe for 14 and 15 years old, as a transitionary period? Or would you say that no, it wasn't the transitionary period, it was because I was in the wrong type of school for me at that time in my life?
I think it was the transitionary period. I think, see, at that point, when I was 14 and 15, I thought I was going through hell. I thought was, my parents did the wrong choice. Like, they made the mistake of putting me in India, and that's why I am going through a lot of this. But actually, when I rewind and I go through, analyze what I was going through at that time, I feel it was something that really changed me as a person, and it really made me grow. So I was able to understand the Keralite culture more, the Indian culture more, and what people expect of me as a girl living in India. And also, uh, just understand how to deal with different people, because there were many different people that I encountered, and so I basically understood what was life. Because back in Dubai, I was living under a very protected environment. There were a lot of people like me. We were all like, chilling, and we didn't have much to be thinking. We didn't have a lot to think about. We were living secure lives. Our parents were always there to take care of us. But moving to India, I would say that that security, it was still there. Like, I knew my grandparents would be there for me whenever I wanted them to, but like my school life was very different from what it was in Dubai. I would make friends with I would have lesser friends. People didn't like me. That didn't happen in Dubai. A lot of people liked me, and they just accepted me for who I was. But in India it was different. So I would say this was a transitionary period where I learned more about human nature, where I learned more about myself, and where I learned more about the culture. So it was a period of growth, and I am thankful for that.
Listening to you retell the story, and you make it sound seamless. You make it sound like, I almost imagine listening to you now and watching something on Netflix. A young girl moves back to live with her grandparents, the tough times, and then the celebration at the end, being really grateful. For anybody going through what you were experiencing right now, as you described it, it felt like, and in your words, it felt like you were going through hell. For a parent who made the choice to send you back to your home country because they believed it was the right thing for you, and now that you can look back, you can probably agree that they made the right choice for you, for your growth. But for a parent right now who's having to make that decision, what advice can you offer them to support their teenager who will feel like it's the most difficult, most challenging time in their life?
Um, so I believe a parent should know that it's going to be really difficult, especially if they're moving their child from a liberal country to a more conservative country. They should know that it's going to be really difficult for their child to make friends, and I believe they should prepare their child more. Because in my case, I didn't even know the language well, so I think they should teach their child how to speak the native language more. Native language better before sending them there, and also they should sort of educate their children about this culture. And with that in mind, these two things are, I think, the best that they could do. A prerequisite, like, before sending their children, they could do these two things. And once the child is already in the school going through this change, they could probably call their child every day and talk to them, because that's the time when they need to converse with their child more. In my case, my father actually made connections with the principal, the vice principal, and my teachers, because he wanted me to feel more welcomed in the school, because he cannot contact my friends and tell them to be friends with me. So he tried to do whatever he could to so that I felt more engaged with the environment. And so that was something that I think other parents can do as well. But then that also depends on their children. So if the children don't want their parents to make connections with the principals, then you don't have to do that. But I think what you could really do as a parent who is going to send their child through this change is contact them every day and talk to them, and just maintain a very transparent relationship with them, so that they actually tell you their problems and they find someone whom they can confide their problems with. Yeah.
So I know there's a parent listening to you saying, this is amazing advice, such great advice, but the problem is my teenager won't talk to me. How do you approach that now that you have experienced this and you are still 19? And I'm sure that you have peers who did have communication challenges with their parents. How do parents communicate with their teenagers and support them through transition like you went through if their teens won't talk to them and won't allow them in?
Okay. So if that's the case, I mean, if a teenager doesn't talk to their parents well, there might be a lot of reasons for that. Maybe because the teenager doesn't trust their parents, or maybe because the teenager feels like the parents might just not understand, or maybe because the teenager is just too angry because of the transition and is not acceptable of the change. So in this case, I believe the parent will have to still continue pursuing, like still continue trying to talk to the teenager. And also, the parent will have to make a lot of indirect attempts to make sure that the teenager feels okay. So, in my case, initially when I moved to India, I wasn't, I mean, I also had the feeling that my parents wouldn't be able to understand me. And so I didn't completely open up about my experience. So that's when my dad went and started making connections in school. So I think that's one thing parent could do. But if your teenager doesn't like it, then don't do that again. But then you could also, if the teenager is going somewhere, definitely there will be someone that the teenager knows, right? Like in my case, when I moved to India, my relatives were there. So I believe my father or my mother could talk to my relatives to make me feel better in that case, or or they could talk to my class teacher and let her know that I'm facing a transition. And the teacher could talk to me. Maybe someone else apart from my parents could talk to me, and so that I could find emotional support in other people. Yeah.
Amazing. Great advice, Riya. You talk a lot about your father. What was your relationship like with your mom at that time?
So my mother is a bit emotional. She gets, so if I tell her something if I tell her something that has happened in my life that made me sad, she would be sadder. Like she would be even more sad. Like she'll get emotional really fast. So I want to become emotionally strong, and I see that strength in my dad. That's why I tend to confide more about my issues and problems in my dad. But I often have a lot, whenever I have to talk about chit chat about something like gossip or something, I'll do it with my mom. But if I really need help with something, it will be with my dad because he is emotionally strong, and my aim is to be emotionally strong as well. And I also do not, I mean, there have been times where I have confided some of my issues with my mom, but then she just gets too tensed listening to them, and I don't want to trouble her too much. So I just confide my problems with my dad.
So I'm going to stop for a minute and go back to something I heard you say and something that you shared with me pre-interview, this idea of strong. And I like the similarity that you used, that it's about being emotionally strong. And you described your mom being more emotional and your dad being more emotionally strong. What does that really mean? And when you're thinking about that strength, what are you really telling us about that strength? Because I think, and this is why I call this show Strong, because I think sometimes as women and men, we think that to be strong, we have to hide our vulnerabilities and we can't be emotional, because if we're emotional, then we can unsettle other people around us. And I know I'm guilty of this too, Riya. And I'm concerned that I'm transferring this idea of strength to my daughters and to my son, and potentially to the students that I'm in care of. What is it for you? What do you mean? And what is the difference between your father is emotionally strong and your mom is more emotional and you want to be more emotionally strong?
Okay, that's a very deep question. So I'll try to give my best answer. In case of my dad, so from what I've observed in him, he doesn't talk a lot about his problems. So he knows he has issues, and he doesn't talk a lot about them to my mom. I mean, because he knows that she cannot handle them. She might get overly stressed about them. So he talks about it sometimes to me or to my elder brother. And I mean, it's not, and also to his friends. He also has a group of friends who really support him, who are also in their journey of becoming emotionally strong. So he has a really good circle, and they all confide in each other. So that's something that I think is really good, and I'm also looking forward to have a circle like that. But my dad doesn't talk about his problems much. Secondly, if I have issues, I go and talk about it to my dad. And my dad doesn't overly stress on anything that I'm saying. He's like, okay, you have this problem? Fine. Let's talk about solutions. Let's calm down. and let's talk about solutions. He's very rational and logical. It's not all about emotions. Whereas in my mom's case, I feel like whenever there's something that stresses her out, she if she's stressed, she tries to remove the stress out in different ways. So she might either bring it out on herself, like she might not sleep, or she might not eat well, or she might, get furious with someone at home. So those are ways that I see my mom relieving her stress. And to be honest, I see some similarity in myself as well, in that aspect. Sometimes when I get stressed, I do get angry with people around me. And that's something that I don't want to have. But with my dad, that doesn't happen. He knows how to control his emotions, and he knows how to deal with things. And he doesn't get stressed so fast. I mean, it's just not possible to get him too stressed. He's very chill, easygoing, and that's also something that I want to be. And every time I talk to my dad, he tells me how ego is a bad player. It always uh, is your enemy. Ego is your enemy, and how ego is going to destroy your life. And he tells me that in order to live life, you need to have less ego. In order to live life happily, you need to have less ego. And in my case, I do believe I have ego issues, and my dad helps me reduce them. He's like always telling me to uh, chill down and not be too competitive and not to think too much about myself and all that. But I don't get that sort of a support from my mom, because I can see that she's not very strong in handling her emotions, while my dad is. So I usually tend to like ask my dad for my emotional helps, and I I want to become more like him in this case. So I believe the difference between my mom and dad is the way they handle their emotions, and this shows me that my dad is emotionally stronger as compared to my mom.
I like how you've broken that down for us. And it just feels like a very, very calm, peaceful way of handling the challenges that life will come to us. And it's very important to me, and I know it's very important to probably every parent watching this right now, that they have a strong relationship with their teenage daughters and their teenage sons. But there seems to be a barrier in that communication. Something goes awry, and parents and mothers and their teenage daughters seem to struggle to communicate. And there doesn't seem to be a quick fix. It doesn't matter who you listen to or what TED Talk you listen to or what workshop you go to. We're dealing with human beings, and so relationships are very different. From your experience, being a teenage girl, having a relationship with your mother, feeling a little bit closer to your father and being able to go to him for more emotional support, what kind of a relationship did you have with your mom, and what was communication like with her when you were a younger teenager? And how is it changing now that you're 19, getting closer to 20?
So when I was a early teenager, I think my relationship with my mom was a bit more like when I was about 12 to 13, it was okay. Like, as in, we still bonded a lot, and we had lots of things in common. And I was still a child. Like, I didn't have my opinions, and my I wasn't like my identity was completely wasn't formed yet, and I was still, I was like, okay, whatever parents say is right. Like, I don't care. I'll just listen to them. But as I started to grow up, I had opinions of my own. I started forming opinions of my own, and I had my choices, my preferences, and they were different from my mother's. So we often had arguments about a lot of things at home, like do I really like her cooking? Sometimes it wasn't a big deal. That wasn't a big deal, because then she would tell me, if you don't like my cooking, you have to make something better than what I did, and I'd be like, okay, never mind. I'll just eat what you made. Or else it would be about why aren't you doing this properly? Like, she would always want me to be a perfectionist. That's something that I've noticed in my mom. And when I talk to my other female friends, they tell me the same thing. They want their moms want them to be perfectionists, to be the best at what they do. And so I've noticed that whenever I do something and it's not so perfect, she doesn't she doesn't thank me for she doesn't it's not thanking, it's just acknowledging me. She doesn't acknowledge me for trying. She just says, okay, you did it, but it's not good enough, next time you try better. That's it. So it wasn't like, okay, you did a great job, but next time we'll do better. I think the choice of words that you use matters a lot. So that's one tip that I would give to parents who are dealing with, who are having problems at home with their teenage daughters. Be more encouraging, because it's already a period of struggles for us internally and externally. So that's one thing. And so as I started growing up, I started having differences from my mom, and she wanted me to be a perfectionist. So definitely our relationship was going downhill. But then, like, as I matured, like right now, as I hit 18, 19, I realized that my mom is going to stick to her opinions, because now she's 49, 50. She is wise. You can't change her. You need to change yourself. You need to grow up. You need to be matured. So I decided to just accept her for whoever she is, and accept her opinions, and be like, okay, that's great, you have that opinion, I have this opinion, I like this, you like that, that's great. And so that's how I've been trying. It's still a struggle. I'm still not very good enough at doing it, but over time I realized I'm the one who needs to change and not my mom. So I have I'm still trying, and I mean, our relationship is steadily improving as I grow older, and I hope we become best friends one day.
I'm listening to you and I'm giggling a little bit because, sometimes I wonder, Ria, and correct me here if I'm off the mark, but sometimes I wonder if our teenage daughters and our mothers are watching movies about teenage daughters and mothers, and on these movies, there's always a bit of challenge, and then there's always that funny moment, and then there's that bonding moment. But in real life, it doesn't look like that. In real life, it's raw, it's harsh, it's painful, emotional, challenging, and there's not always a happily ever after. What would you say if you could have your mom next to you right now? What would you say would be your greatest wish for your relationship with her?
Oh my God, that's a deep question. Okay. I think I would ask my mom to try to accept me for what I am, and, try to be a bit more positive, like, actually support me with her words. And, I'm not asking her to appreciate me for everything that I do, but, just be supportive, just be encouraging in what I do, and um, not hurt me with the mistakes that I made before. Yeah. I think it's
Is it
silly, but it actually
is it
affects a lot.
is it bringing up the past? I know my daughter says this to me all the time, is you're always bringing up things I've done from the past. You're always reminding me of things I did wrong and I don't like it. Like, just accept me for who I am today. Would you say that that is one of those challenges that you've also faced with your mom?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
My mom, I think, I don't know, I feel like my mom feels I'm going to do the same things that I did in my past over and over again, that she doesn't want me to take a chance, and she doesn't want to give me a chance to improve. It's just like, oh, you're going to do this again. I mean, just accept me and know the fact that I'm trying my best to change. So, yeah, even though it might take some time, I'm still on my process. I'm still trying my best to make a progress. So just bear with me. Yeah, that's what I would try to
Some
say, tell her.
Very often when I'm sitting down with mothers and teenage daughters, either on panels or in one-to-one sessions, and even myself, I'm the mother of a teenage daughter. One of the greatest challenges in that communication is a mother complaining that her daughter thinks that she's not smart enough, or that she doesn't have the same skill set that 2021 young girls have today. And she feels that her daughter judges her. And then on the other side, daughters feel like their mothers, or in my experience, daughters feel like their mothers don't understand them, that their mothers didn't go to school and didn't learn the skills that they've learned, that mothers are not living the time that they're living right now in this minute. So, how can they relate to being a teenage daughter? And it's this constant struggle of the two, mother and daughter, trying to prove to the other that, hey, I understand you, let me understand you. And the other one saying, you don't understand me and stop judging me. And then it's back and forth. And it's almost like it's this, the will of two strong females that both have the same intention, and that intention is to be close and to love each other. Like you said, I hope one day we can be best friends. And I think that really is at the core of the relationship. But for some reason, mothers and daughters, and I look back at my relationship with my mother, and I hear her relationship with her mother, and it goes on and on and on. And I think it will always be that there is always a comparison of what we think our relationship should be like and what it really is like, and what we're scared of as mothers for our teenage daughters, and teenage daughters, what they want their mothers to understand. And there's this constant back and forth pull. What do you feel about this relationship, and how do you feel that, is there a hope that mothers and daughters will ever understand each other? Or is this just the passage of life? Is this just the journey that it will always be this challenge?
In my opinion, strictly in my opinion, I feel also from what my friends have told me, uh, I've observed what you've said in my life, and also from what they've told me, I've observed it from their conversations with me as well. And it really confuses me, and it also scares me at the same time, because I'm gonna be a mother one day. I might have a daughter one day, and I don't want it to be like this. Um, I believe, and I want to believe that we can end this spiral, and that a mother and her daughter can be really close. Um, I think one of the best things to do that would be if there's a really strong transparency between the mother and daughter, and the daughter is able to share her vulnerabilities without the mother telling her, oh no, you're just being lazy, or you're not doing it good enough, that's why maybe you should wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and start doing it, then you would be able to do it better. So instead of saying that, there should be a time, there should be some time where the mother is just waiting patiently and listening to her daughter. I think that's one thing that I observe in my mom and dad. My dad listens to me, even though I'm speaking complete bullshit. He would actually listen to me. But my mom is like, okay, faster, faster, tell me what you want to say. I'll tell you what my opinions are. And then we just end the conversation. So I think there should be a more deep conversation, because I think, again, there's a communication gap in everything. Maybe that's why the spiral is there. Um, like I said, maybe daughters just want to be encouraged a bit more. And in order to make them work or gain skill sets, I believe instead of comparing them with someone else, I think it would be good if the mother says something like, oh, okay, these are the skill sets that you need to grow. So what are you doing? How about you start doing it today? And she just lays out a plan, and she's like, okay, you know what? If you do this, you could get this skill set. Or if you do this, you could do that. Or, something that I think the mother should also sit and talk to the daughter about her future. And it shouldn't be in a very condescending manner. It should be like, you know what? I want you to be successful, and I'm here with you, and we are doing this together, and I'm going to make you successful. I'm really going to be there with you, and I'm actually going to support you. So what are your plans? And tell me your plans, and we can work on this together. So be more supportive, I would say, because my dad does that, and I observe it in my relationship with my dad. But my mom is just like, she's there when I'm happy, when I have good times. She's like always supportive. She's like, yes, you did it, that's great. But when I am not really doing well, she's saying that it's because you're lazy and you're not doing things well. You don't have the skills necessary. So instead of saying that, I think you could phrase your words in a different way and try to be more, try to make your daughters feel like they can trust you so that this gap can be reduced. Yeah, I hope that answers the question because
Yeah,
I'm
that's
still on my
great.
journey and I don't want to do this. I don't want there to be this gap when in my and my future daughter's relationship. So just like how you are, on your journey to becoming into having a really strong relationship with your daughter, even I want to do that with my future daughter. So I'm also on my path of discovery. I hope we reach our destinations.
Of course, you're doing great. You're definitely someone that your mom will be looking at with so much pride, Ria. Let's talk about your relationship with your father. Daughters and fathers. It's a romance right from the minute he lays eyes on his daughter. And for some reason, even hearing you today, it always feels like the easier relationship for a teenage daughter. You talked very much about your father being the role model that you look to for what you believe is being strong. You talked about how he listens to you and supports you through the challenges and celebrates the success. It's like a seamless relationship that just seems easy and flowing. And how do you believe it became this way? Do you think that there was a moment in your life when it happened, or was it just always this way?
When I was back in Dubai, when I was still a kid, I kind of saw my parents to be the same. So I knew my mom was a little irritable back then as well, but my dad was kind of calm. But I would still rate them on the same position because I was a kid and I didn't care. But as I started growing up and I had issues of my own when I was, struggling and I was, in my teen years, I would go to my dad and he would actually help me out. Like I actually found a lot of support from him during this time, during the teen time. That's when I established the trust that, okay, you know what? If I tell my dad that I have issues, he's not going to like judge me. He's going to say something like, okay, this is something that happens during teenage. I understand. Okay, but what is the solution to this problem? Also, there was a incident in my life that actually deepened my relationship with my dad. It didn't deepen, but it just shocked me about my dad's personality. So there was this back in Dubai, there was this boy who had a crush on me, and so his friends, some of his friends didn't like me, and they made up stories about me. And one of the guys who made stories about me actually, he spread out a lot of rumors about me, like in the school bus, and it was really embarrassing. Uh, that's when I came home crying that day, and I was crying. My mom got really tense. She's like, "What happened? What happened? What happened?" And I was like, "No, nothing happened." I didn't want to talk to her because, like I said, she would get really tense, and she was really tense that day. I talked to my dad in the evening, and he's like, this is okay. That's what happened. Okay, fine. Give me the phone number of this guy. And he happened to be my brother's friend, so I had his phone number. It was saved in the landline. I sent his number to my dad. My dad called him and talked to him, and everything ended. The next day, I was free. I walked in the school bus, stress free, and I was absolutely happy. And I didn't expect my dad to do that, but he did. And I was like, okay, now I have problems, and I have someone who can help me. So I would say that was the point where I realized that I could actually talk to my dad about anything without being judged or being commented, and I could actually get solutions. So I felt like I had a really supportive friend, dad, a really supportive person in my house, in my family. So yeah, that's something that really deepened my relationship with my dad.
I love listening to your stories, Ria. Talk to us about comparison and how parents tend, and I know as parents, we tend to do this. We compare our children to each other, we compare our children to ourselves when we were younger. And I don't even know why we do it. It's kind of like the go-to tool that parents seem to use. And I think it's more of an unconscious thing. I don't think it's a conscious thing. How does it feel to be a teenager when comparison is a parenting tool that's used in your upbringing?
So definitely yes, everybody compares. I compare myself to my brother, and I tried to tell my sister that, she could actually do better by comparing her with me or her other peers in class. Um, but and everybody has a different standard, so I think that's why everybody compares. But initially, when I was compared with my elder brother, who's 2 years older to me, uh, we were being compared on everything that we did. But uh, also, especially in academics, in the subjects that I wasn't good at, like math and physics. My mom used to compare us. My mom actually thought it would help me and make me better in academics, and it did, because I was like, you know what, I'm going to prove myself to you, and I'm actually going to get better than him, which I did in 10th grade. I really worked hard for it, and I mean, of course, my mom helped me a lot. She prayed a lot for me as well. So I would never ever say that she didn't do anything. I mean, sometimes in on her face, I'd be like, "You didn't do anything." I'd just joke around, but actually within me, I do know that she helped me a lot during those times. But because I've been used to comparison, because my parents compared me from the time, I mean, from a long time since I was born, and it's not just my parents, my grandparents, my relatives, it's everybody. They just compare you, and I think it's quite common in the Asian culture to be compared with other people. So I kind of got used to it, and I see myself doing it sometimes, and I don't want to do it. I mean, it can be healthy sometimes. It can push you to becoming a better version of you, but in the long run, it's definitely not healthy, because you have to set the standard for yourself. Someone else shouldn't be your standard.
I love listening to you, Riya. You know, when I work with the youth every day, and in particular, I help them discover how to take a career aspiration and make it a reality. And in that conversation, a lot of our emotional challenges and fears and limiting beliefs come up. And I try to talk them through those times. But when you answered this question for me about your aspirations, you didn't talk about a job. You talked about how you wanted to better yourself as a human being. And in your words, you said that you aspired to become a better version of yourself. I was taken aback by this, and I thought, how did she get so wise? She's only 19 years old. A better version of herself sounds like somebody in my age that's, looking at the future and thinking, I might have less time in the future than I've lived already. I need to be a better version of myself. But at 19, you're discovering who you are. How does a 19-year-old want to be a better version of herself? What does that even mean at 19?
I think a lot of that has to do with um, my prior experiences, those times where I wasn't able to talk so well in public, those times where I felt I wasn't, smart enough, those times where I felt like I wasn't able to depend on myself for handling my emotions. So all these times just triggered me, and it made me think, okay, yes, I have these issues. Can I change? I mean, everybody can grow. I mean, I recently read about the growth mindset book, and it really inspired me. So I wanted to change myself, and I believe everybody who wants to do it can do it as long as you work on it. So the book Growth Mindset, as well as some of my past experiences, have really contributed to making me feel like I can really change. Because there was a point in my life where I believed that, you are how you are born as. So whatever you have is given to you when you're born, like your personality, your traits, you can never change them. But I mean, that point has gone away since I read the book. So now I'm trying my best to change myself, especially when it comes to my emotional well-being. I really want to take care of my emotions. I really want to be good at handling my emotions. I want to be able to be the one person who I would go to when I have issues. And I want to be like my dad, because he's able to deal with his emotions himself. I also want to be someone who is able to do that. And I also want to take care of my mental health a lot, because I want to prevent all sorts of issues that I might have in the future, mental health issues. So I really want to focus on my mental health, and also all the other things that I want to be good at. Yeah.
You're inspiring, Riya. Really so inspiring. Right before we say goodbye and wish you amazing things in your future, there's a 15-year-old listening to this right now, a young teenager looking at you thinking, Ria, I don't know what I want to do with my life. And I don't know if anyone really understands me because I don't understand myself. What do you want a young teenager to hold on to? Something that you know for sure coming through that stage, that you know that if they can just hold on to this one thought, it can make a real difference in their life. What would that be?
I would say trust yourself. I mean, I know in that phase where you're struggling, you don't know who you are, you don't know what you want to do, everybody's confused, you're confused about yourself, you don't know much. So I believe you should just think that this is a stage which has a lot of confusion because teenage does have a lot of confusion. You are struggling to find out who you really are. And everybody goes to this stage. Everybody goes to this stage and everybody comes out. And, even the best of the best people, Jack Ma, uh, Elon Musk, everybody has been through this. And then they come out. So it's okay to be confused. It's okay to it's okay to feel not okay. It's okay to feel like people don't understand you because that's how it is. If you feel like there's no one to listen to you, that you're feeling alone, try to, you know, keep a diary. Try to write down your experiences if you feel really bad and there's no one to talk to. But I think there would be someone that would be there to talk to you, like maybe your friend, maybe a trustable friend. And if you don't have a trustworthy friend, then maybe a parent, if not a parent, then a relative or anybody who you can trust. Try to confide in them and talk to them and tell them your issues. This is really important because I don't want you to hold on to your pain by yourself because uh, that might not be very wise thing to do because you might end up having issues in the long run. So I think it's important for you to confide in people or just maintain a diary and write down what you want to do. And also try exploring the things that you like. If you like singing, go ahead, try doing it and do things that make you happy. If you like singing, start a YouTube channel, start singing. Don't think a lot about what other people think about you. You can really come out to the stage feeling happy. It's not that hard. We're with you.
Incredible. I heard so many wise things from trust yourself, talk to someone that you can trust, have fun, and just it's okay to be who you are and don't be so hard on yourself. Thank you so much, Ria. That was an incredible conversation. Thank you for sharing your life story and life journey. Thank you for your honesty and being authentic with us today. And that brings us to the end of an incredible conversation. Today we met with Riya, who is currently studying at university in Singapore, living with her family. I'll see you all next week when we bring another guest, Too Strong.